What's going on, everyone? If you watched my previous video yesterday, you would have noticed that basically I said this. You can make a full Doom array in this. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. What if I could make a full Doom array in Serum? I might try that. So we're actually going to do that now because I did it just after I made that video. And I'm going to do it from scratch and then show you guys the preset I made, and that preset will be made available. If you're wondering what this is basically the Doom array, or rather a diminished version of it within Serum, which is completely plug and play and works a lot like the original one based on the kind of theory behind it. So we're basically going to go in and design the thing, and you're going to get to see how that comes from A to B. Okay, so we can kind of just start by dropping Serum in. We'll just disable the other Serum track for now. We'll get Serum 2. By the way, if you already own Serum 1, I highly recommend you upgrade to Serum 2. It's completely free. That's kind of the whole point of the last video, showing it off to people. I'm going to start by creating a sine wave as our main oscillator. Now, you can actually kind of keep the modulation in there if you want. It's actually quite nice. And if you change the morph to crossfade, you'll see that instead of stepping, it will do a nice little smooth thing. That's something I did on the actual patch. But apart from that, the original Doom array only uses sine waves and noise, but it does ring modulate the noise. The way in which we ring modulate the noise is going to be a bit different to what people normally expect, and it's something really cool within Serum 2, which is very new, which I found out you can do. And basically we're going to do that. So we're going to just get some white noise, the most basic kind of noise, and I'm going to get my keyboard ready so I can basically play some notes on it. We'll just listen to this. Really nothing much going on there. It's completely unmodified, it's just a pure thing. But what we can do, which is quite important, is doing a filter. And you'll find if you go to miscellaneous, you actually find ring mod. And that's currently routing oscillator A, which is our sine wave, to it. We want that to route the noise through it. So we'll click noise, and then we'll go on to this little button here, which is really cool, which basically sets the frequency to the exact note you play, and you'll hear this. Now if we bring the mix down, you can hear that that's a lot more kind of not meshed in, it's not as locked in with the sine wave you got there. But if you actually increase the mix, it kind of sounds a bit more intermodulated, which is really cool. And it's very subtle, but it goes a long way when you add distortion on. It goes a long way when you add distortion on. So we'll go over that in a second. So next thing we're actually going to have to do here is the routing in the mix tab. So what you can do is you can basically set the oscillator routing to none, but then you can crank up the bus like that. So that'll actually route it over here to effects to bus 1 and bus 2. So basically what you also want to do is route this filter 1 to the buses, because that's routing to the filter, and essentially you can then hear the sound all together with the noise implemented. I put it on. You can hear that kind of anyway. Right, so we've done that. The next thing we're going to do is apply a compressor on main. So we're going to do a single band compressor because I think it works best. We're going to get a nice good ratio, like maybe 32:1 or maybe 16:1. I quite like 16:1 for the sound. Attack, we're going to get that but quite low, around 30, and release on 150. And you notice that's gone quite quiet, so we're actually just going to bring the gain up of the master. You'll notice that has a kind of punchy element to it. Oh gosh, my keyboard's gone AWOL. One sec, guys. Yeah, sometimes it just likes to do a false MIDI note or something. Maybe my wire was stuck on it because I got my keyboard wire running over my keyboard. Yeah, so that's that. Nice and compressed. It's not a bad sound actually. Like, I guess I'm gonna do this for the sake of demonstration, but I guess if you just put a filter on the end, you could kind of just. it's quite a cool like sound. It really rattles in your ear. It's got a lot of high end, got a lot of low end. But what we're after is something a bit more distorted, something a bit more like array-like. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over to our first bus, and this is going to be derivative of the distortion bus. So if I pop up the diagram now, you'll see that there's the distortion channel, the echo channel, the phaser channel, and the amp channel that gets then routed into the end compression. And basically that kind of all meshes together to make the sound. We are only going to do 2 channels, but these are 2 channels which work very well together, and they fill out a lot of space. So that's basically what we're going to do here. I will probably do an alternate version where we focus on the distortion and the phaser channel, because they're quite fun as well. And possibly a method to do the amp channel. I'll work on that too. So we're going to go, first thing, if I remember it correctly, because I know it off by heart pretty much, we're going to do a diode distortion. Now, this isn't fully exact, but we're going to keep this with a filter on, and you'll see why when I show you the final patch, why that's quite important. We're just going to put the filter like here for now, and we're going to give it a little bit of drive. So let's listen to that. It just sounds very distorted. So I'm going to knock off some high end. Right, cool. Let's add another distortion. This is going to become a trend very soon, you're going to see. And we want this a bit more tube-like, right? So we're going to add some tube saturation. We're not going to put filter. This is emulating the preamp of the KV100 multi-effects, so we're going to drive this up a bit. Now another thing you can do, if you really want to, is do an actual like wave shaper. So you can do xFER, which it could work. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, you could do that. But I chose to opt more on the side of tube because that's the sound I wanted, because it's basically a tube wave shaper, so you get a bit of both, and I think it's nicer to have the tube saturation in there for what happens later on. The next thing we're going to do is add another ring modulator on bus 1. So basically that will go under filter, and we're going to go into MISC again. We're going to go ring modulator, and we're going to give that a listen. Ah, my ears, man. That's why you're going to want to keep the mix low, and you might want to assign that to a macro. Now, this isn't something I did in the patch, but something you could do if you wanted to is add a little kind of automation using an envelope, so you could go like this. Just some food for thought of what you can kind of do to modify this thing if you're going to build it yourself. So that's nice. Next thing, I believe I did another distortion, and basically this was a wave shaper to emulate the wave shaper stage of Tactical Nuke. Now you'll notice it's not doing the full analog kind of preamp into that and filters and everything, but basically it kind of works the same. You can mess around with it, you can change the order of it. It's just about the sound. We're just after the main sound here, and I'll show you that in the end patch, how I ended up finding that to be the best possible sound. So we're going to do the X shaper like I showed off previously, and we're going to go on to B, and we're basically going to just select something we like the look of. That might be too extreme, but this could really be anything you like, so this could work. It's just about finding what you like, and then we're going to add another distortion, basically, and that's going to be our downsample. And we're already kind of hearing the effect of that. Okay. Now I realized I may have actually missed a phase here, and that's putting in a filter. And we're going to put this filter in front of these 2 distortions, and we're actually going to attach that to envelope 1. And we're going to give it a bit of stuff. So basically what this is doing, you can do it however you like with resonance or whatnot. That's emulating the CV kind of input for the filter, so it's like a kind of envelope thing which follows the CV input, and it kind of pings with the note, which is very, very nice. You can do that with MIDI using the KV100 unit. And if you're doing more like kind of fast stuff, you hear like the... If you move the filter around, you can kind of hear the... We can make this less extreme. God, this is sounding You can definitely overdo the distortion, but we're going to add another distortion, basically. And this one, I believe you can kind of do whatever you like. I quite like Overdrive because it fattens cannot speak. It fattens it out basically, and this stack thing makes it really fat. So let's listen to this. And that's basically the distortion phase. Like that last Overdrive thing, that's what adds a lot of the sound. Now you might notice we're actually kind of clipping on output a bit. That wasn't intentional. If I go to effects and I go to main, I can reduce the gain. Now if you like the sound of that, you can definitely do it. But I've realized why it's doing that, and that's basically because we've set the ratio too low. So it wasn't compressing. And this is the kind of sound you want for your distortion channel. So basically, you know, you're going to want to move your ring mod around. You can do a lot with that. That's really cool, especially with the ring mod. And all those nice little features in there, all these filters. I might save this as a separate one because it's slightly different to the one I came up with. But I'll probably make both patches available if I do that in my Discord server. Join my Discord server down below, basically. And all those patches will be made available on there, hopefully with macros and model and stuff. So that's the first bus. Let's see what happens if we change the level of the sine wave. Alright, if we do it all the way down, we only get noise, so. You'll notice that's not actually doing a whole lot. So maybe what we want to do there is reduce the distortion on one of the elements. So we can reduce this down. Or maybe we increase the volume of the noise. And that kind of does stuff. Again, I wouldn't say it's as good in varying the amplitude as the actual Doom array, but you know, you can definitely do a mix between the two. Like if you bring the noise down, you can get a much more clean signal. You can do a lot by just changing those around, assigning macros and all that stuff. I'm actually going to do that right now. What I'm going to do is I'm basically going to assign the mod wheel to the noise, and that's going to give us our kind of ability to change it on the fly. Nice. Right, we're going to move on to the second bus now. We've done that. What we're basically going to do is add another distortion, because why not? This is going to be tape distortion. Yeah, let's do a tape distortion. Tape saturation. Yeah, that looks good. The importance is we get this kind of cleaner signal through, and you can actually, I guess, add some post filter there. We might want to take off some of the high end. That's cool. And then we do a delay, and this worked perfectly fine. You notice how that's kind of kicking in when there's gaps in the notes. That's basically what we want. We're filling out the sound dynamically when there's no note playing, and we can increase the release tail here, and that's going to kind of fade it in and out a bit more. Get that nice little tail at the end. That's kind of the goal of this, along with adding more of a kind of clean sine waves noise signal through. What we're going to do then is add another distortion. This is going to be a tube to emulate the Trogotronics pedal he puts in, something like that. This doesn't need to be complicated. Just add a bit more compression. He calls it compression. So that's basically the purpose of this. And then at the end of that, after we add a bit more tube, compression, okay, we're just going to add a convolution reverb. Now, you could import your own IR for a spring reverb. There aren't any, and I'm too lazy to. So I'm just going to go with medium, and I'm going to go with gold plate, because I'm loaded with money. Obviously, you can increase the feedback to however you like it. You can increase the mix. So yeah, that's our dynamic doom array. in a nutshell, it's quite easy to put together. The principle is very simple, and you can make a lot of very cool sounds. You can get a lot of space from it. It's very dynamic. You can change the volume levels. What's really important is that you change the knobs a lot. So this is why macros are going to come in so useful, and the mod wheel is going to come in so useful, because you have so much control you can do, and it creates all these really cool bass lines. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to disable this track, and we're going to enable another track, which is the kind of more complete version, which I made last night, and we'll give it a listen. So we got some macros on the side here, and we've got the mod wheel functionality. So yeah, that's basically how you're going to do this thing. Now, we look back at that original patch. Let me just go over some final little things which could be useful. It's important to note that you're not routing stuff out to main. You could put effects on main, you could put a filter on main if you wanted to. That's quite cool. You could do LFOs to kind of modulate the end of it. Another really cool thing you can do in Serum 2 is actually add distortion as a type of modulation. So you could add like diode distortion onto the main wave. So yeah, you can add diode distortion onto the main wave, and you can basically just fatten the thing out if you want to. That's really, really cool. And nothing's stopping you putting different oscillators in here. Nothing's stopping you kind of squaring it out or putting something spectral in, putting unison on. That sounded really good, actually, with the unison on. So this is huge for like Argent Metal and industrial sound design. This is massive. This is huge. We can actually do our own kind of like plug and play arrays and have them more integrated within the synthesizer itself and generate these really cool things. I am super hyped for this. Of course, I will probably still be using a lot more effects on the external end with like the hardware emulation, and I plan to kind of do that, but I've already made a contact library for that, so please go and check it out. I'm going to plug it right now. It's called Argent Shots 2.0. That's a contact library you can buy for very, very cheap. It's only $15 US dollars, yeah. And that's the authentic sound. That's the definitely authentic sound. This is more of the workflow friendly kind of way of doing it, where I'm going to make presets available and people can just kind of plug and play with it for completely free. So yeah, I've been Joff, and thank you for watching. Remember to sign up to the Patreon if you want more deep dive content like this in terms of constructing your own proper Doom arrays from software emulations, and some insight behind the contact library, which will be coming out soon. Essentially, that's the crux of the video. Feel free to check out my other projects like Crossglaive, which is a kind of metalcore project, or BLOODSTAR, which is an indie game which I'm doing some Doom style music for. And I'll see you in the next one.